Welcome to Family Health by Mini First Aid. Mini First Aid are the UK's leading family first aid provider, and we are delighted to bring our latest podcast series to you, giving you all the information that you need around family health subjects. Thanks for joining. Series 3 of the Family Health podcast is sponsored by Savlon Scar Prevention Gel. Savlon Scar Prevention Gel speeds up healing, helps soothe pain, and reduces the likelihood of scarring when used on minor wounds, superficial burns, and grazes. And to be frank, with my 6 children in my house, cuts, scrapes, and grazes are plentiful. So my first aid kit, saviour, is Savlon Scar Prevention Gel. Hi folks, I'm Kate Ball and I'm the founder of Mini First Aid. Welcome to our podcast, Family Health by Mini First Aid. Now, I'm really pleased that you've taken the time to listen to our podcast, because whether you're in the car, you're cleaning the house, or perhaps you're having that luxury relaxing cuppa, our Family Health podcast covers a huge range of topics that might affect one of your family members. And if you've ever had a family health concern and you're thinking, I'm going to Google that, have a listen to us instead. Now, if you followed the Mini First Aid journey, you'll know that in 2021, we took Mini First Aid onto Dragon's Den, and the wonderful Sara Davies, who's here with us today, came into our lives. And Sara's investment and support has been invaluable for Mini First Aid. And I know that she's been itching to get on our podcast for a while now. So it was a brilliant opportunity to chat to Sara on gestational diabetes, because Sara was diagnosed herself with gestational diabetes while she was pregnant. And she's going to talk about her experiences alongside our wonderful guest, Cathy Tabner, who works from My Expert Midwife and specialises in diabetes in pregnancy. So welcome, ladies. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Kate. You're right. I've been itching to get on here for ages, and this is a brilliant topic. I feel like it's one that I researched and wanted to understand so much about, so it'll be brilliant to be able to kind of hopefully learn from the experts as well, but be able to share that knowledge with other people.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sara. Cathy, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at My Expert Midwife.
Well, I'm a midwife. I was a nurse and then a midwife for many years, and I've worked in all different areas, labour wards and birth centres and postnatal wards and clinic and community. I've specialised as a midwife for diabetes in a large teaching hospital trust, and it's a big passion of mine. I had 10-pound babies myself, so I was probably close to diabetes in my pregnancy, but as we will talk about, testing is key. And I've got 3 children now in their 30s. All of my 3 children have given me a grandchild in the last 5 weeks. So wow! The last one was Sunday. So we've been a busy old family. Very, very passionate about diet and lifestyle. Do not like the word exercise. I like the word physical activity, because busy mums are just as good as triathlete mums. And, your diet and lifestyle is hugely important. If you've had gestational diabetes, I like to get the message out that although diet treats the condition, your diet did not cause the condition. It was your placenta that caused it. So I like to take that guilt away from women. As a specialist for many years, when I would ring people up and talk about diabetes, they were always blaming that pizza last week that I had, or I went to a baby shower and I had some cake, and that's not going to cause gestational diabetes. So I love to talk about it and get people's head in the game. It's the placenta that's the culprit, and when the placenta leaves the body, usually so does the diabetes.
Cathy, this is fascinating. I want to know loads more, and Sara's going to share her story with us today. Just to start us off for our episode, for people that might have heard of gestational diabetes but don't really know what it is. It's a word that they've heard. They might have heard an antenatal teacher mention it. What actually is gestational diabetes?
Well, gestational means when you're pregnant. It's a temporary form of diabetes. It is nothing to do with type 1 diabetes or type 2 diabetes. It could be called carbohydrate intolerance of pregnancy, if you wanted to give it a more friendly, less medical phrase to describe it. And it is when, because of the pregnancy, because of the placenta and the hormones that the placenta puts out into the bloodstream, the body becomes temporarily distracted from doing its normal job of keeping keeping the blood sugar within a safe target range. So what happens is the blood sugar rises whenever we eat a carbohydrate. And a carbohydrate can be fruit, jelly babies, biscuits and confectionaries, but it can be sweet corn, sweet peas, it can be pasta, potatoes and rice. A good healthy diet can have lots and lots of carbohydrate in it, but when you're pregnant, sometimes you're intolerant and you're unable, because of your placenta, to properly shift that blood sugar into the cells. So the key thing to remember with all things talking about diabetes, carbohydrates make blood glucose, and blood glucose in the bloodstream is sort of sweet, sticky blood that can damage the eyes and the kidneys, because the blood should not stay sweet for too long. That glucose should move out into the cells of the body where it does its job. And for diabetes, your blood sugar stays elevated. Blood glucose is the same as blood sugar, stays too high for too long. Now, that's like saying to the baby, you're in a little sweet shop. Whilst mummy's pregnant, you can get all this lovely glucose. So all pregnant women all over the globe have got slightly higher blood glucose to allow them to grow a baby. The gestational diabetics, they are probably the type 2 diabetics of the future, unless they do something now. So it isn't type 2 diabetes, it's very different from type 2. But it's like your baby's kind of showing you a crystal ball to say, you've got this tendency in your body to have a slightly elevated blood sugar. So you can be very, very slim and have gestational diabetes. It's not about your body shape, it's about the tendency at a cellular level. And we do know that something like 50% of women with gestational diabetes who don't kind of alter their diet and their lifestyle after that diagnosis will go on to develop type 2 diabetes within the next 10 years. So it is a bit of your baby's showing you a snapshot of a potential future. I have to say, the diagnosis is like a loaded gun for some people, but it is your lifestyle that pulls that trigger. You don't have to develop type 2 if you've got gestational. It's just the baby giving you that little heads up that you might struggle. I would say lose a sweet tooth, get yourself tested every single year and make sure diabetes hasn't come for you, because it's coming for me. I had 10-pound babies. My body would like to be diabetic if I let it. Absolutely love a carbohydrate. And I have a test every single year called a HbA1c, which any woman who's had gestational diabetes will be able to get from the GP to make sure that you've not become diabetic. And then, because your placenta causes the condition, when the placenta leaves the body, the diabetes usually, in the vast majority of cases, disappears. Yeah. So that's what's caused it. Your baby's not at any increased risk. They just keep an eye on them for that first 24 hours, and then you go on and live your life. But I would say lose that sweet tooth if you can.
So, Cathy, we're going to talk in a bit about testing, and we're going to talk about what this means for pregnant women. I'm intrigued, Sara, because Cathy's hugely comprehensive list then telling us, that was stuff that I didn't know, by the way. Sara, when you found out you had gestational diabetes, did you know anything? Did you know this stuff that Cathy's telling us now?
Do you know, I mean, it was my little boy's 10 now, and I had gestational diabetes in both my pregnancies, and I have read up and researched so much about that. And even listening to Cathy there in them first 5 minutes has really helped me in my understanding. Honestly, Cathy, and I'm someone who's well informed about it, but do you know the big thing, Cathy, that you said that hit me? It was the guilt. So I am somebody who struggled with my weight all the way through my 20s. I was a yo-yo dieter. Basically, I'm either losing weight or I'm putting on weight. I'm never in the middle. I'm either on a diet or I've finished my diet and I'm piling the weight back on. And so the reason that I got tested for gestational diabetes, because I had a BMI over 30 when they found out about the pregnancy. And then they told me, oh, you have gestational diabetes. Now, I was riddled with guilt, because when I did read up on it, what I know is if you have gestational diabetes, your child is 50% more likely to have diabetes in later life. So what I told myself was, it's my fault, because I haven't been able to control my weight all my life and I'm a yo-yo dieter. I have made myself have diabetes, and therefore I am putting my child at higher risk of diabetes. Therefore, while this is a tiny little organism just growing in my tummy, I'm already thinking I'm the worst mother in the world and I've failed. And I carried that guilt all the way through my pregnancy. And it was eye-opening for me. I met a lady who was really skinny and really fit and healthy, and she told me she had gestational diabetes, and I thought, well, I thought it was only for women who were over 30 BMI. So, and it was meeting her that gave me a little bit of acceptance of maybe it's not me. And actually, how I've come to terms with it is I mean, my little boy is 10, and I love that you've said now you would be likely to get to develop type 2 diabetes within 10 years. And I do exactly what you said, Cathy. I go every year. I go around my birthday for my HbA1c. Sometimes I get it twice a year because I try and keep on top of it. I've read up on a lot of diets, and I don't like to call them diets, healthy eating lifestyle choices. So I follow the work of Dr. Michael Mosley because I know he's done a lot of work on reversing type 2 diabetes, and I wanted to understand about carbohydrate and that effect on diabetes so that I could make healthy lifestyle choices. Because I can remember, for example, so when I was diagnosed with gestational diabetes, my mother-in-law wanted to help, so she said she would make me a healthy breakfast every morning. So every morning she did me this massive bowl full of fruit. And I had grapes, and I had apple, and I had banana, and all this fruit and yoghurt with a bit of honey on to help, right? So here was me munching away into this very healthy, fruit-laden breakfast every morning. And of course, the dietitian when I was pregnant was like, whoa, 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 stop! You've got to stop with that. No, go and have some eggs and avocado for breakfast. Be stopping with the fruit. The amount of fructose you're having in there, and I'm thinking fruit's healthy, and it's really about understanding about sugar and carbohydrate. And as a woman with gestational diabetes, I really took the effort to understand that. And I think I'm 10 years in now, and I can tell you I'm not even pre-diabetic. You know, I don't even have elevated sugar levels. I've managed to get a control. And and again, my weight's gone up and down. I had another pregnancy in that time. I've been overweight in terms of what the scale says overweight, you know, what the charts say, me BMI over 30. I've got my weight under control. But all the way through, I've maintained that HbA1c result and not put myself in the pre-diabetic stage. So I've realised I can control it. I can make sure, if it's within my gift. Nobody's saying you're going to get type 2 diabetes because you were gestationally diabetic. What they're saying is, as you said, that was a warning to me that I need to be careful. And also, I'm a mother, so it's within my gift to bring my children up to understand that they are at higher risk. But it's not because I did anything wrong. It's just, as you said, my placenta decided that's what I want. It's the warning signs. So I'm now making sure that my children understand about carbohydrate, about sugar, that yes, we need to eat healthily, and fruit's healthy, and we need a mix of fruit in our diet. But let's focus and have more berries. Let's really go big on the blueberries because they have a lower glycemic index than maybe the grapes. You know, I remember someone saying to me, a grape is like a natural sugar cube, you know, and so I make sure my kids fill up on strawberries and raspberries, not grapes, for example.
Brilliant.
Not saying that they're not healthy, but it's learning and understanding. So it's been a red flag for me, this gestational diabetes. Thankfully, but both my children are very healthy. I'm really healthy. But as you said, it's alerted me to it at that early stage, and I've been able to do something about it.
Yeah, it's a benefit. Your baby does you a favour, really, by saying, I'm just going to warn you something that might come along the road later on in life. Yeah.
Cathy, as a midwife and as a pregnant woman, if I am going to have a test for gestational diabetes, just take it right back to that point where I've been told, or Sarah's been told, you need to go and be tested. What happens at the test? What do they do to your body? And what experience do you go through to be tested?
Well, the test is a screening test. It's looking at the whole population. The reason we'd have to screen for it is because it doesn't have symptoms. You can be walking around and feel completely healthy and well. Okay. Gestational diabetes does not have symptoms. It's not like the type 1 person who might feel they're going hypo or jittery. You're not going to get those warning signs. It's not that full-blown type 1 or type 2. You can feel pretty dreadful, but you're pregnant, so you might feel a bit weak, a bit dizzy, a bit lightheaded. And we can't separate that out from ordinary pregnancy. So we screen women and we do what's called the oral glucose tolerance test in this country. And that is a fasting blood sugar. Overnight you fast, you don't even have chewing gum, you don't even smoke a cigarette, nothing should affect your metabolism at all. You can drink water, but you can't have anything else. So you have a fasting blood sugar in the morning. Then you drink a drink that tastes of orange, but it's never been near an orange in its life. If you're allergic to orange, you can still have it. And that's got a 75-gram carbohydrate load. Bearing in mind an apple's got about 14 grams in it. So you drink this little drink, then you have to sit still in a waiting room and not move, not walk about. We want you at rest, so you're not working off the calories and the grams of carbohydrate. And then we do another blood test. And it's like the old steps song, 5, 6, 7, 8. 5.6 is normal for fasting, 7.8 is normal for the 2-hour result. If you hit the 5.6 fasting blood sugar or the 7.8 2-hour result, you come into my realm, and I ring you up, or I did do when I was doing that specific role before I came to my expert midwife. I would ring you up and say, you've got this form of diabetes, it's temporary, it's gestational diabetes. And as we've said, it's a bit of a shock, and it takes the shine off a pregnancy, and it makes it a very medical pregnancy because you've come now into a risk group. Now, that blood test, the NHS has got a limited budget, and they've thought, when is the best time to test for gestational diabetes? We do it between 24 and 28 weeks of pregnancy. It is a time-sensitive test. So if you're going away for a fortnight and you get your appointment, you think, oh, I'm going to ring up and cancel it. Please try and get it done between the 24 and the 28-week mark, because that is when we know what the correct criteria, what the correct values are for a pregnant woman's blood to be. So if you get it late, when by the time you come in along at 32 weeks and saying, I forgot, or I've moved house, I didn't get my letter, it's less accurate. Very time sensitive, less accurate if it's done late. So don't skip that test. Make sure you have nothing to eat. The fasting's got to be accurate fasting. The sit still has got to be an accurate sit still. If you're absolutely bursting for a pee, we can let you go to the loo, but we don't want you pacing around or chasing after your toddlers on the day. You know, we want you resting. So when that blood result comes in, the National Institute of Clinical Health Excellence, that looks after all of the 180-odd NHS trusts in the country, says this is how I want you to look after a pregnant woman with diabetes. And they stipulate we must see you every other week in your pregnancy. So it becomes a very medical pregnancy because your placenta every week is shunting out more and more and more pregnancy hormones. So every week the goalposts are changing as to what your blood sugars are doing. What works for you at 30 weeks of pregnancy when you come along and they say you've got gestational diabetes, that's a positive test. We bring you along to a clinic and we say, now, get your head in the game. Let's calm you down. Let's explain how a carbohydrate makes a blood glucose molecule in the bloodstream. We give you some leaflets. You can go on the excellent Diabetes UK website and there is a tab for just gestational diabetes.
We'll link to that, Cathy, in the notes for the podcast as well.
Brilliant.
So that folk have got it and have a look.
We'll get your head in the game a little bit and say never eat a naked carb. So, you know, you can have a little Baby Bell cheese with your half an apple, or you can have, a lot of people think it's very good to eat dates in pregnancy. There's a little bit of research that you can have a shorter labour if you eat dates in pregnancy, but they're yummy and sticky and sweet. So you can eat those with a nut, or you could eat those with some cheese. So we say always add something fatty or protein-like to a carbohydrate, because we know that you're going to eat carbohydrates. Look at the world we live in. They're everywhere. Yeah, so we give you a diary. We give you might have a smartphone that reads a blood glucose reading on your arm nowadays, or you might have a finger prick machine, and we ask you to test your blood sugar yourself. You do most of the work in a diabetes pregnancy. You test a fasting blood sugar and you test an hour after each of your 3 main meals. Now, the blood sugar is at its highest 1 hour after you've eaten. So you look at the clock, you start your meal, you put your knife and fork down, and I say go for a 15-minute walk, or put the washing away, take a pair of socks upstairs, put it in the drawer, come back down, get a T-shirt, take that and hang it up. Move your leg muscles, because that will draw the glucose out of the bloodstream into your big pumping leg muscles. You don't have to go fast. 1 mile an hour, 15-minute walk after a meal will halve the blood sugar for the next 2 hours. So that's a brilliant hack if you've got gestational diabetes, or like Sarah and like me, if you've struggled. I've struggled with the same 20-30 pounds all my life. It's been on, it's been off. I've done every diet there is. I'm one of 8 children, one of 5 sisters, and we look like a set of Russian dolls. We just get little, we've got that size and that shape going on. I've got a sister who's got type 1 diabetes, and I've got family members that are pre-diabetic. And like Sarah, I read everything there was to read myself when I had my £10 babies and married to a GP, and he looked at me and said, you'll be a diabetic by the time you're 50. Well, I wish I'd have put some money on that, because I'm 63 and I'm not diabetic. I've got an HbA1c 35 and I have it done every single year.
Right,
I've
so
got a sweet tooth.
At this moment, Cathy and Sara, if they were in the same room, would be high-fiving each other, because look at the pair of them. The pair of them, they're completely under control. I'm just witnessing this amazing. So, Sara, I'm intrigued, because obviously Cathy's talked about, you're going to get that phone call from the midwife. Can you remember all that? Can you remember that suddenly you've got all this process and medicalised stuff that you've got to do? Can you remember that, Sara?
Oh, I can remember it, and Kate, I can remember it like it was yesterday. And I remember the biggest disappointment for me is it went from being a low-risk pregnancy to a high-risk pregnancy. And anyone who's pregnant will know that category well, because low-risk pregnancy is when you can be midwife-led. And so you can go into a birthing centre. I had dreams of, a water birth and all of this, and then all of a sudden I'm told, no, I'll be high risk, so I'll be consultant led, so I'll need to go and I'll be induced early, because your baby's going to be big. My babies were born I was induced at 38 weeks with the first one. He was £8.10, and I was induced at 37 weeks with the second one. He was £8.12. So big babies at 37, 38 weeks. Mm-hmm. Inductions, the induction itself really wasn't fun. It just wasn't the labour that I'd envisaged having, and so I was disappointed. And as Cathy said, I was having to go in every 2 weeks for the monitoring. What I did do is take some solace from the fact of, they're keeping a really good close eye on me,
sure.
So I know I'm being really well looked after. So I kind of married up I won't be in the lovely birthing centre in the pool. I'm going to be hooked up to a load of machines, and I'm going to be induced early, and that's just going to be the labour I'm going to have. But at least they're going to keep a really close eye on me. Now, at first they tried to control my gestational diabetes with diet, and I was really disciplined. I was like the teacher's pet when I was at school. So I'm that person that did exactly what they told me. They said, do this and do that, and I was doing the whole bloody lot, and I still wasn't getting the results they needed. And every 2 weeks when I was going back, it seemed to be getting worse. And eventually, from about 28 weeks, I was insulin controlled. So I was having to do the finger prick first thing on the morning, and then an hour after every meal. I didn't know that trick about going for a walk after a meal, Cathy. I'm going to use that all the time. It makes so much sense. They get the blood flowing to your big muscles where they're going to use it. But I did start having to inject with insulin every so many hours, 4 or 5 times a day. And I'm actually I now suffer from polycystic ovaries in later life, and the doctors told me I'm insulin resistant. And I wonder if all of that was connected with the gestational diabetes and the insulin, and I kept having to up my insulin intake. And then I remember during the 2 pregnancies, I just cut out sugar altogether, because I thought, if I can get my body in a brilliant place, and I'm really thin and I'm low sugar and everything like that, I won't have gestational diabetes in the second one. And you bugger, I got gestational diabetes still in my second pregnancy, and then I was disciplined on the diet, and I still had to be insulin controlled in the second diet, so in the second pregnancy. So I understand. I believe that I did everything I possibly could, but as you said, Cathy, it's my body's way of telling me I need to be aware of this. But I was disappointed during the pregnancy, but at the end of the day, all that really matters is a healthy mum and a healthy baby, and I output 2 really healthy babies.
Also, your diet is not the culprit, it's the placenta. And what works, you can eat boiled egg for breakfast's great, egg and bacon's great. Remember, it's carbohydrates that you're intolerant to, and you're only going to be pregnant for about 3 months after you test positive. So you could have egg and bacon, you could have avocado, you could have a cheese and ham plate and some berries and some Greek yogurt. These things are all brilliant. But those placenta hormones are still ramping up week by week by week. So what works at your 31st week appointment, by 33 weeks, you can be eating exactly the same, and you will not be controlling the blood sugar, because the placenta hormones are basically wanting you to grow a big baby, and it's like they are making your cells insulin resistant. That insulin resistance is key. I mean, it's interesting, sticking with pregnancy today, but people should read up on polycystic ovaries is a form of sort of diabetes of the ovary, dementia, diabetes of the brain. Blood sugar is very high. We live an affluent Western lifestyle surrounded by carbs. As Michael Mosley says, we don't rest our system enough. We're eating and snacking and eating and snacking. And that 5-a-day fruit campaign was a marketing slogan made up in 1991 in a business room like Sara will be used to. Sara's, Dragon's Den type hat on. You'll know, slogans do well, don't they? 5 a day. There was never any randomized controlled trials on it. It was the fruit manufacturers that thought, fantastic, we've got this slogan. It's actually more important to, I would say, eat vegetables, your vitamin C, maybe 2 or 3 pieces of fruit a day, but I wouldn't go 5 pieces of fruit a day on anybody who wants to, look after the lifestyle, really.
Yeah, and it's understanding about the different types of fruit.
Yeah, yes.
I grapes are the devil. I don't ever go near
mango,
grapes.
Papaya, the tropical fruits.
The beautiful ones. Yeah. But then I find pears are brilliant for fibre. So
kiwi
I have
fruit
a lot of pears, kiwi fruit, and it's really understanding. And I think I have the benefit of having had a light shone on this for me. So I've taken an interest and I've learned about it. So many people, I wish they taught kids this more at school, because like you say, we got brainwashed with the 5 a day. So my kids will be there in the punnet of grapes, and I'm going, no, have a few strawberries, and no, mummy, it's all 5 a day, it's all 5 a day, and it is a little bit of knowledge sometimes is dangerous, and I think it's important to understand. Especially a lot of people do different diets. There's a lot of diet clubs out there that advocate free food, your fruits and your pastas are free, eat as much as you want. It's not good. It's all about understanding a balanced diet.
And we still demonise fat, whereas
we know that
fat,
they tell you don't eat
fat.
Avocados. Yep, and avocado, best thing you could be eating.
Yeah,
best
olive
thing.
oil,
Avocados,
good for
nuts.
you. Yeah, Cheese, butter,
Cathy, Sara talked about having to have insulin. And, if you're a pregnant mummy and you're thinking about your body and what you put in your body, and then somebody tells you that you have to put a drug into your body, what is it? How do you get it in your body? And is it anything to be fearful of?
No, it's not. We all need insulin, and we would die without insulin. And that's type 1 diabetes is people who have a pancreas that does not make insulin. I wish they didn't call it type 1 and type 2, because it sounds like they're similar and they are completely different conditions. So you need insulin to live. Whenever your body ingests a carbohydrate, insulin is a hormone that's made in the pancreas naturally by the body that detects the presence of eaten carbohydrates and instantly can come out into the bloodstream, and it can escort that blood glucose out of the bloodstream and get it into the cells where it needs to do its job. You don't want your blood sugar just roaming around like traffic on the road. You want it parked in the drive and plugged into that little electric charging point. You want that insulin to do its job. And if you're type 1 diabetic, you'll die without insulin. You need that insulin. It's very important. If you're type 2, you've got a pancreas that probably is making shed loads of insulin, and your body's resistant. So if your children are playing upstairs, jumping on the beds, and you're shouting at them, I'm going to come up there in 2 minutes, and you don't go up there, they get as they ignore you. And that's what your body with insulin resistance does. It's like, she's not going to come up, we're all right. The body becomes deaf to the signals that we send out. All that insulin gets pumped out in higher and higher and higher amounts, but it does not do the job. It cannot bring the blood glucose down. Now, we only look for diabetes when we look at blood glucose, but you'd have to go to the private sector for it, you can get insulin levels checked. If you've got very high insulin levels, it's probably that your body is working really hard and having to push a load of insulin out to do the job. And Sara may have done it, I've certainly done it and had private checks on my insulin levels, which were okay. So insulin's important for life, it's a hormone, and we can make it artificially, and we can give insulin to people who've got ropey, dodgy, flaky pancreatic function, whatever their form of diabetes. For our gestational mums, that fact that you've got that insulin and that fact that you've got that high blood sugar going on in your pregnancy does increase the risk of a big uterus and a bigger baby, because it's got this extra glucose to grow a big fat chunky baby. And they tend to put the weight on their shoulders and their neck. They put it on in an unusual form, these little chunky babies of diabetic mums. And that can make them difficult to part with. So there's a slightly increased chance of shoulder dystocia. Also premature labour, because that uterus has to expand and hold that big baby, and it can just get stretched and give birth too early. Unfortunately, some poor outcomes, some stillbirths are at slightly more chance if you are on insulin. Now, if you just control your diabetes by diet, then your risk of anything like that happening goes back to the same as everybody else. You don't have that increased risk. So it's really good if you can control it by diet. But like Sara says, you might start out in your pregnancy well able to do that, but you need that insulin. That insulin is going to keep you safe and your baby safe. Unfortunately, it pulls you into the camp of, right, you now need an induction. So if you are on diet-controlled diabetes, we will recommend you go no more than 6 days over and then have an induction. If you're on metformin, before we put women on insulin, we can give a tablet called metformin induction. If you're long history of use, the midwives call it metfarmin because it does have a gastrointestinal slight side effect there, and that is very good. Michael Mosley knows all about it. A lot of the medical writers, it's linked with longevity, actually. It's a safe drug in pregnancy, and that will control the diabetes in a lot of gestational diabetes as well for a few more weeks, but eventually the women that have to go on the insulin, they really feel they've got a medicalised pregnancy. So metformin mums, they can probably have an induction at 39 weeks.
Right.
Insulin mums, it's 38. 38 weeks, and we say, come on. You know, we scan your baby extra frequently as well. It's a very medicalised pregnancy. 28, 32 and 36 week scans are looking at that baby. And they are also looking at the placenta because we don't really know how it works. We can put a man on the moon, but we cannot quite tell you about the placenta. It's this magical organ, isn't it? And it does seem to just age that little bit quicker in diabetes. So if you get any loss of movements, reduced movements in your babies, we do implore you, please go straight in and always ring and say, I am a diabetic. I am pregnant. I am diabetic. And if your baby's not moving, reducing its movements or causing any concern, we need to get you in and get you monitored. And there's a fair chance that some women will go in for a scan at 36 weeks and we'll look and we'll say, do you know what, that placenta's not quite doing its job. We're going to bring you in for an induction. So I would have your bag packed from 36 weeks if you've got gestational diabetes, just in case.
Okay.
You'll love this, Cathy. Should I tell you about my induction with my second pregnancy?
Yep.
So I knew I was introduced at 38 weeks with our Oliver. And then with Charlie, I'd had a call from the Palace and they'd awarded me an MBE. And they gave me the dates of when I could have my, when I could go for my investiture. And so there was only one date before the baby was due and all the rest of the dates were after. And the last thing I wanted was to be going to the Palace with leaky boobs and a big blob of baby fat that hadn't disappeared, where I didn't have the excuse of I'm pregnant, I'm just carrying this extra baby weight. So I selected to go for the date before I had the baby, so that I was clearly very obviously pregnant and I was just blooming. My skin was glowing, my hair was nice, I was blooming. So I remember being in the Palace on the Tuesday at 37 weeks pregnant and waddling up to Prince William in my 4-inch stilettos, and he looked at my bump and said, wow, that looks like it's coming soon. And I said, yep, I'm actually, so I was the Tuesday. On the Wednesday, I was getting the train back straight up north, and I was getting straight off at the hospital for that the extra scan, and they brought me in, and I gave birth on the Thursday.
Wow!
So I actually gave birth 2 days after we'd been in the Palace.
There we are, ladies. You've heard it. You've heard it there. Now, Sara, I'm really intrigued because you talk very confidently about your experience, and you've obviously taken a huge amount of time through your experience to educate yourself and understand gestational diabetes. There will be, without a doubt, people listening who are feeling very anxious or perhaps have been diagnosed with gestational diabetes. And what, from your personal experience, Sara, what words of wisdom, top advice would you give somebody who's feeling a bit anxious about the whole thing?
So I'm definitely one of these knowledge is power type people.
Okay,
yeah. So I found the way I could take comfort was the more I understood, the more people I talked to. I mean, podcasts weren't that big back when I was pregnant, but I just think having this knowledge that Cathy's just shared now would have been absolutely invaluable to me at that point. It's the little tips and tricks, but I went for every one of the appointments, and my midwife was fantastic, and she understood that I was anxious. during my pregnancy. And so she said to me, every week I used to have my hospital appointment on a Wednesday, and she would run a clinic at our local doctor's, not the one that I was at, but a one in our group. And every week she would I would go and have my appointment with the doctor, and I would go straight over for an additional appointment with her, where she would sit and talk me through, in layman's terms, in words that I understood, what they talked me through at the diabetic clinic that I'd been into. She'd be able to look at my results on the computer, she'd get my notes out, she'd be able to explain it to me. And the more people explained, the more I understood, the more I could come to terms with it. And I went in, I remember going in for my inductions with comprehensive birth plans. Kate, you'll not be surprised. For me, my birth plan was like another business plan. I had the plan, and then I had the plan if this didn't go right, and then I had the plan for this, and it was like a flow chart. My births were like and I remember they laughed at me when I came in. I brought in my little brown folder, and I remember trying to explain to the head midwife, as I was going to be consultant-led, he's all of my planning for the and they just weren't used to women, but I was trying to run my pregnancy and my labour like a business, because that's all I knew. But that is what took away my anxiety. And some people are like, ignorance is bliss. I am the complete opposite of that. I like to know and understand, and I just think the way you've explained it, Cathy, though, I think for years I felt riddled with guilt. I'd been a bad mother. It was all my fault. I'd caused this gestational diabetes. I'd put my children at risk. And you explained it so eloquently in the first 5-10 minutes. It's not. It is just your placenta is in control of this, and it can happen to anybody. It's not. There's nothing that you do in your life that makes your placenta more or less likely to do this. So I think if we can take away that stigma and remove the guilt that we've already got enough guilt going on in our lives without having to add that to it. And then I think the more you can understand about it, but some absolutely brilliant advice. I think even just listening to this, Cathy, listening to the NHS provide. I had the tests, I had the support, I had the dietitian every week. There was all of the information on the NHS website. The support is there. You've just got to embrace it and go for it. And also, I think I didn't meet any other mums with gestational diabetes through my pregnancies, other than this one woman that I met very late stages. It would have been brilliant to have had other women to talk to about it. I think that would have really helped me. So I would imagine now there's probably forums and groups where you can go and meet other like-minded people and share these ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. Cathy, if you had a mum listening now that wanted a takeaway from today's session, what would you want them as your one key thing for someone to take away from listening to our conversation today? Well,
just that your body, is on this journey, and if you test positive for gestational diabetes, you're on, like Sarah says, you've got a different plan, but you can pull in lots and lots of normality. You can try and keep the baby front and centre of the pregnancy energy, because the baby's very much pushed to the back of everybody's attention. It's all about the blood sugar. And I would say you can eat a piece of cake, you can eat a piece of pizza a couple of times a week. You've got to be kind to yourself. Don't beat yourself up. It's not the diet that's the problem. The diet's the treatment, but life does go on. And take it as a signal from your baby that your baby's grown on the inside of your body, and they know that body intimately, and they can warn you and say you've got this predisposition maybe in later life, so use that as a positive. Because I think I was probably a gestational diabetic, but I think I went for the test a little bit late, and I think I got a 5.3, and I think that was the upper limit of normal. If you think you're diabetic, you're not going to have any symptoms, but it's perfectly okay to go along and ask. Ask for the test. Ask, say, the risk factors: have you had a big baby over 10 pounds in the past? Have you had a diabetes pregnancy? They're easy. You're at risk. Have you got a Southeast Asian or Afro-Caribbean or Middle Eastern ethnicity? Other ethnicities are more at risk. Is your BMI over 30 now? That is the big one that for most people it is, actually. That's becoming the norm, really. Yeah. So that's what brings most people in for that test. Please don't take it as any guilt or any shame. We are a healthy nation of women, and if your BMI is over 30, Go for the test on time. If you test positive, enjoy the rest of your pregnancy. There are lots of lovely things you can eat. Get your head in the game. Enjoy the Greek yogurt and the berries and the cheese and the ham. A croissant has actually got quite a lot of fat in it, and anything that's got fat in it slows down the blood sugar response. So never eat a naked carb. A little Baby Bell or a little piece of cheese, about an ounce size, that size of cheese, some nuts with your dates, some berries, Philadelphia, that sort of thing. Other cream cheeses are available, I'm quite sure. But yeah, cover your carbs in a little bit of fat. Enjoy the 15-minute walk. As soon as you've eaten your meal, do something fun with the kids. Walk the dog, walk around the block. Just go up and down the stairs a few times, get those leg muscles pumping. And expect the diabetes to go away, but you will have to do plan A, plan B, plan C. You're in hospital for 24 hours, and induction's not always the easiest way to start a labour, so get your head in the game with induction of labour. My expert midwife do antenatal classes, digital, you can watch on your phone. Really get your head in the game about inductions of labour from experts who do a lot of them. That's people like my colleagues. And go on the Diabetes UK website as well as the NHS websites. Information is power, and you are in the driving seat. The lifestyle, the diagnosis, think of it as a loaded gun, but your lifestyle's got to pull that trigger, and you are in control of that trigger.
Cathy, that line now, never eat a naked carb. There we go. That's my line. That's going to be the line. That's going to be the line that we want everyone to take away. Sara, thank you. It's wonderful to hear voices for people who've been through experiences. Lived experience brings what we do at Family Health to life, because it says that we're not just talking in medical terms as experts, but we're also talking to people that have eat and slept and breathed their way through it. So Sara, thank you for today. And Cathy, your wealth of knowledge in your easy digestible format is brilliant, because the whole premise of this podcast is that people go to Google and look stuff up and then panic because we're overloaded with stuff that can sometimes be scientifically really complicated. So I think today's conversation, ladies, has been really helpful. So folks, without further ado, I must thank Sara, our Dragon's Den superstar, for coming to talk to us today, and Cathy Tabner from My Expert Midwife. You've been listening to the Family Health Podcast by Mini First Aid, and we would love you to subscribe to our socials and sign up to the newsletter about the podcast, because it means that you will get regular subjects, podcast alerts coming through to your mailbox. You then don't need to do anything. You can subscribe to the podcast as well. It means that it will arrive on your podcast platform every week without further ado. And my final request before you go is, if there are family health topics that you would like us to talk about, today's podcast was one of those requests. If there are subjects that you would like us to cover, please don't hesitate to get in touch. You've been listening to Family Health by Mini First Aid. Thank you for listening to Family Health by Mini First Aid. I hope you found our podcast really useful and informative. If you want to know more about Mini First Aid classes, courses, qualification courses or first aid supplies, please do visit minifirstaid.co.uk or look us up on all your favourite social platforms at Mini First Aid. I take Savlon Scar Prevention Gel everywhere with me so that I am always prepared for the many little and sometimes bigger accidents that my kids encounter. Thank you again to Savlon Scar Prevention Gel for sponsoring Series 3 of the Family Health Podcast.